Evolution is everywhere, from the world we live in to the ones that we create. It's the idea of evolution that would inspire the X-Men, a new species of young heroes born with the abilities to fight for change in a hostile world. But even these ideas can change over time, with the outside world pushing them to grow and evolve into something even greater. For Marvel's Mutants, this evolution would arrive through 1975's giant-size X-Men, which saw a newer, bolder generation step into the role of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's original team. Produced as a last-ditch effort to save a stagnant title, Giant Size would end up kicking off a decades-long renaissance for the X-Men, giving a new level of depth to the book's mutant metaphor and building a sense of scope and adventure that would give the title some of its grandest stories. Here we will examine the book's behind-the-scenes development, its creator's storytelling choices, and its lasting legacy to uncover how Marvel helped a forgotten comic evolve into something truly incredible. Nowadays, X-Men is a title with a titanic legacy, with its central metaphor growing to represent the struggles of countless minority communities. Of course, the genius of the mutant metaphor isn't a result of a single creator, but countless interpretations added from decade to decade. First appearing in 1963's Uncanny X-Men, mutants were originally introduced by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby as a means of avoiding the oft-included superhero origin story, which the pair had begun to see as repetitive. As such, mutants received their abilities at birth, which let the pair write the characters as a metaphor for groups facing discrimination and oppression in society.
I couldn't have everybody bitten by a radioactive spider, exposed to a gamma-ray explosion,
recounted co-creator Stan Lee.
And I said to myself, why don't I just say they're mutants? They are born that way. We all know that mutations occur in nature, and the beautiful thing about such mutations is they don't require any explanation. They can happen to anyone.
Radiation, if it is beneficial, may create mutants that'll save us, instead of doing us harm,
stated co-creator Jack Kirby.
I felt that if we train the mutants our way, they'll help us, and not only help us, but achieve a measure of growth in their own sense, and so we could all live together.
Unfortunately, these early comics were less than perfect. Lee and Kirby's metaphor ended up clashing against X-Men's all-white and, at the time, all-straight cast of characters, who were more of a stand-in for the potential of atomic energy than the civil rights allegory that Lee would later claim. Ironically, despite the new concept, this original team ends up feeling more like a grab bag of archetypes from Marvel's other big sellers, complete with a stalwart leader, a rich guy, a snarky teen, an intellectual with a more bestial side, and the team's female lead, who never really gets much to do. Unless you count being a love interest, I guess. Yeesh. There were multiple efforts to revitalize X-Men through its original run, deepening the book's subtext through villains like the Sentinels, as well as shakeups for the team under creators Roy Thomas and Neil Adams. But sadly, X-Men continued to tail Marvel's other titles in sales, eventually stopping the publication of new stories in 1970 and producing reprints from issue 67 on. The team and individual mutants would continue to make cameo appearances across Marvel's other books, teaming up or trading blows with fellow heroes through one misunderstanding or another. And while it's fun to see these stories continue in some fashion, the X-Men title would remain dead until former X-Men scribe and then editor-in-chief Roy Thomas would pitch their revival nearly half a decade later. In the general sense, I got it going, recounted Thomas. Al Landau, the president back in that 73-74 period, mentioned it would be a good idea to have an international team of some sort. He had his own company, which at the time was selling Marvel's work overseas by the page. He mentioned this general idea just in passing. I countered that it was an excellent idea, and I thought we should do it for the X-Men. Martin Goodman, the publisher at the time, wanted to bring the book back, but didn't want to spend the money, so he just did reprints for a while. Since obviously there was some sort of market for X-Men at various times, I thought we should be able to revive it. I don't think it was acted on right away, although I got a lot of encouragement, but soon after we got the go-ahead to do X-Men that way. Building this new take around an international team for broader appeal, Thomas originally approached Mike Friedrich to write with Dave Cockrum on art. However, Friedrich would leave Marvel just before the comic was slated to begin production, leading to Thomas reaching out to Len Wein, best known for co-creating Swamp Thing and some minor Hulk character named Wolverine? Doesn't ring a bell. Once on board, the two creators quickly set about building this new cast. While a few recognizable faces would remain, namely Cyclops and Professor X, this group would be made of outcasts gathered from around the world, giving some much-needed definition to the mutant metaphor. This colorful new roster was largely thanks to Cockrum and colorist Glynis Wein, who ditched Kirby's two-tone uniforms in favor of brighter, more varied designs to better distinguish each hero. Not only did this result in looks that were instantly iconic, but it really helped drive home the mutants' role as outsiders who refuse to hide who they are. No surprise then that these diversified looks would become the de facto approach later on, highlighting the universal scope of mutants and their mission.
Everybody felt that the original team didn't sell well enough to support a new book,
stated Cockrum.
We all figured if we're going to do a new book, let's do a new team, and I was just as happy that way. It's a story that Len Wein loves to tell about the creation of the new X-Men. I had this huge sketchbook filled with characters that I had come up with. Nightcrawler was a holdover from when I was doing Legion of Superheroes for DC. Storm was an amalgam of several characters. Colossus kind of sprung fully grown out of my head. With the exception of Cyclops, I never considered the original characters to be all that strong, so I was happy for the chance to reshape things. I practically started from scratch.
Building on the foundations of this new and exciting team, Wein and Cockrum would only continue to elevate the X-Men beyond their humble beginnings, kicking off an adventure that would redefine the title: past, present, and future. Unlike other issue 1s, Giant Size is structured as an aptly named giant-sized event, closing the gap between the X-Men's past and their present. As such, instead of Lee and Kirby's Villain of the Week formula, Wein and Cockrum's story is built around the X-Men's new origin, or rather, its second genesis, with Charles Xavier traveling across the globe to recruit an all-new class of mutant heroes. What makes Giant Size so thrilling is its ability to sell this reinvention, balancing character, suspense, and scope in equal measure. The comic's first chapter follows a pretty deliberate pace, giving 2 to 3 pages to introduce each new mutant while building a sense of urgency around Xavier's mission. The defiant but empathic Nightcrawler, the confident and generous Storm, the young but protective Colossus, and the prideful Thunderbird are all welcome additions, set against established characters like Banshee, Sunfire, and Wolverine to tie this world together and give a more global picture of the mutant experience. Nightcrawler in particular gets a lot to work with as the book's first mutant, with his escape from a literal witch hunt in Germany showcasing the increased focus on social commentary. Wein's dialogue is an incredible compliment to Cockrum's designs, grounding each character in their own nationalities and enhancing the eclectic nature of this new team. But that isn't to say it's flawless either. It can also swerve right into caricature, with Banshee going full Chief O'Hara and Thunderbird spouting a number of slurs in some ham-fisted attempts at manufacturing drama. It's definitely the product of 2 white men in the 70s writing for a variety of ethnicities that aren't their own, a disconnect that the title would iterate on and address across its history, with varying levels of success. This varied new team is finally rounded out with the returning Cyclops, who gives them their first mission, rescuing Xavier's first class, who have gone missing while tracking a mutant on the South Pacific island of Krakoa. It's an inspired use of the title's lost years and the team's oft-underplayed mission of coexistence, challenging this eclectic group of outsiders to pull together and rescue the X-Men to reclaim their past. What follows is another evolution for the title courtesy of Wein and Cockrum, who used this new cast to elevate the soap opera underpinnings of classic X-Men. While Lee and Kirby's run on the title was somewhat limited by its cast, with most of the series' subplots revolving around a love triangle between Jean, Scott, and Angel, Wein and Cockrum used this new class's rescue mission to tease out a wealth of new dynamics, divvying the group into several odd couple pairings as they storm the island. It's a brilliant synthesis of drama and action, with the new team's squabbles heightening the tension as they draw closer to the center of the island, until past and present collide in a climactic twist. The mutant that captured the X-Men is the island itself, brought to life and psychically feeding off of its prisoners. In many ways, Krakoa is the perfect antagonist for this event, with its birth from atomic tests harkening back to the X-Men's own loose mythology, while its otherworldly look and powers hint at the more cosmic adventures to come. And fittingly, it takes everything from the X-Men's past and present to overcome, with both teams launching one coordinated attack against their would-be captor. This final step from lone outcasts to a unified team is brilliantly charted through Cockrum's layouts, as tinier panels with individuals slowly give way to interconnected sequences and splashes of the team as they come together, pooling their might to launch the island into space. And that's definitely the last we've seen of that. All in all, the story ends with a fairly clean wrap-up. What was lost is now found. The new team has finally come together. And we're even treated to one last bit of cathartic humor as Angel asks,
"What are we gonna do with 13 X-Men?"
"Oh, buddy, you have no idea what's in store." Giant Size X-Men was an incredible success in every sense of the word, reigniting readership for the X-Men and showing just how far the title could be pushed in terms of its tone, presentation, and subtext. It was a true evolution of Lee and Kirby's concept, one that would also evolve beyond Wein and Cockrum. While Giant Size was originally planned to continue as a quarterly book, its production was sidelined as Wein's growing editorial duties at Marvel and DC began to take focus away from his role as a writer. Instead, Uncanny X-Men resumed bi-monthly publication in August of 1975, with Wein and Cockrum both leaving by issue 107, and then up-and-comer Chris Claremont moving from co-plotter to lead writer. And while the architects of the title's evolution were gone, the legacy of Giant Size allowed Claremont to lean even harder into what the duo established, giving more depth to this ever-expanding cast, further defining the mutant metaphor through stories like God Loves, Man Kills, and launching the team into grander cosmic adventures through epics like the Dark Phoenix saga. The success of the Claremont years would make X-Men a household name through the 80s and 90s, launching countless spin-offs, crossovers, and adaptations that all harken back to what's seen as a golden age of X-Men comics, all built upon Wein and Cockrum's last-ditch effort to save a dying title. Giant Size was actually my gateway into X-Men comics at large, and while it's a somewhat humble read compared to the grander spectacle that would come after, it's impossible to deny the raw potential this team left in their wake, celebrating the title's past while looking towards an even brighter future. Despite countless evolutions over the decades, modern X-Men still feels intrinsically tied to Wein and Cockrum's revival. From the reintroduction of Krakoa, the ongoing deepening and transformation of its core cast, and sadly, even the return to a safer, more recognizable status quo that Marvel seems to be building to in the wake of the fabled Krakoan era. It's natural to crave the known, to stay with the familiar, but evolution is natural, inevitable even. And though brand safety can oftentimes lead to the loss of a title's history, the beauty of comics is that they also exist in a constant state of reinvention, with creators using their passion and attachment to restore and elevate stories long thought forgotten. What is lost can always be found again, and there will always be another team of creators out there, waiting to spearhead the next great evolution for the X-Men. Thanks for checking out today's video. Like I said, Giant Size X-Men is a comic that I've always held a very special connection to. It's one of the first comics I ever read, and over the years I've really come to appreciate how much it was able to kick off, even if that's largely attributed to what Claremont and Byrne did while building on it. Even still, I think it's a great piece of Marvel history and is a great showcase of just what the X-Men title is capable of with the right people working behind it. And with the Krakoan era drawing to a close and a lot of people scared about the new direction being teased, I thought it would be great to put all of that into perspective and celebrate what I think made the title great in the first place. If you like this video, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every little bit helps the channel out a lot. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Carol Ann Brenneman, The Comics Cave, Dom DeFelice, and my patrons, who are helping me to grow this channel and continue doing what I love, and hopefully what you love too. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay uncanny.